Welcome to the Leadersmith Podcast. I'm Darren Gerdes, and I'm going to be going to Twitter Tuesday with an eye toward the election. This is our election special. Stay tuned.
In a world of incompetent bosses, micromanagers, and petty tyrants, you are listening to The Leadersmith. Now, here is your host, Darren Gerdes.
Okay, so after months and months and months of weeding out just leadership concepts out of Twitter and other social media, I'm now going to do what will come very, very easy and look at election-like things because the election's right now upon us. And so what I'm going to be doing is looking at Trump and Biden through the eyes of leadership through posts that are there. I want to start in a different place, though. I want to start with this. So the idea of what's going on. And now I have a second master's degree beyond my MBA, a master's in public policy, and I had a class with a political consultant where I learned all about a Leesburg grid. This is what politicians are going to use in order to kind of frame the debate about who they are and who their opponents are. So if you just have a square box and you draw a cross in between, in the upper left-hand corner, it's us on us. What do we want to say about ourselves? And then in the next box to the right of that, you see us on them. What do we want to say about our opponents? And then in the bottom, you see them on us. What do they want to say about us? And then in the box to the right of that, them on them. And what do they want to say about them? And so it's a pretty simple thing. You want to paint them one way, they want to paint you another way. And that's why we're doing what we're doing. So for example, we want to paint ourselves as Captain America, and we want to paint the opponent as Thanos. He's a bad guy, and he's ugly, and he probably wants to destroy the world. That's the way our campaign wants to show what's going on with the other campaign. Now, on the other hand, our opponent wants to paint himself as Santa Claus. And who doesn't like Santa Claus? He's bringing you toys and goodies, and he's kind and beneficent. And he wants to paint us as the Grinch that stole Christmas. So that's what's going on in the election. And when you think about that, it makes sense of why you see all the rancor, because we're trying to get a contrast between us and them so the voters can vote. And they're trying to get a contrast on us, and each of our contrast about the other is pretty negative. If you go back to the Mitt Romney-Barack Obama election, what you saw was something interesting. Mitt Romney was a gentleman. And Barack Obama didn't really get that deep in the mud compared to some other politicians. But Romney particularly, he wasn't going to get into the mud where he was going to be throwing and talking really bad things about Obama. Now contrast that with the 2016 election where you had Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, who were more than willing and able and capable of throwing mud and having mud thrown on them. And so it got very rancorous very quickly. Okay, with that being said, let's look at Twitter. So the first one that I want to show is Annie at Annie Rook, who posted this, bring the country back together again, hashtag Biden. Okay, so the idea here is that if I'm reading this right, that if Biden is elected, then he'll unify the country and bring us back together. What she's forgetting is that half the country hates everything that Biden stands for, and it doesn't matter if Trump is elected or Biden's elected, half the country is kind of against. I can't see a place where Biden is going to be unifying. Now, that makes sense in a liberal's mindset or a progressive's mindset, that Biden will be the cure that ails us, but it certainly doesn't do a conservative. And in this, I'm trying to be, I'm a partisan. Okay, I'm trying to be very nonpartisan in this particular thing. Personally, I have very clear, specific, well-developed thoughts about my political affiliations, but I'm trying to be as kind to all sides as I can in this. But I think Annie is going to be disappointed. She'll be disappointed if Trump wins, and I know that people on the other side of the aisle will be just as disappointed if Biden wins. Okay, so here's another interesting one. Now, we get hyperbolic here as we're painting the contrast. So here's Zen's seasoned flat earth skillet. This is what continuously boggles my brain about the Trumpanzees. Okay, so when you're calling your opponent Trumpanzees, like chimpanzees, or when conservatives do this too. They libtard is a term that I've seen bandied about, which is a stupid and terrible term. But when you're calling your opponents these kinds of things, it doesn't bring about dialogue. This person says it's safe to assume that the majority of them aren't the billionaires Trump cares about and strives to help. How can people be so ignorant to support this greedy sociopath even against their own well-being? And it's hashtag Biden. So first, I think that Zen here doesn't really understand what Trump is doing, and that he's not just helping millionaires, but then there's a whole philosophical mindset that he is supporting. But this isn't really helping. And there's this picture of the emperor in his the emperor's got no clothes and just covering Trump's private parts. A bloated Trump here with an emperor robe held out, just covering his private parts. Says fake news. I don't think that this is going to go anywhere to help anything, but I'm sure Zen is going to feel good about her, I think it's herself in the process, because she's been able to say it and stick it to the man or whatever. Okay, so here on the other side you have Angela McDaniel at Angela Sweet. Love this from Tucson, from North Carolina. Hashtag Trump 2020. It says Trump Pence 2020 because Democrats hate America. Okay. Democrats are a lot more critical about America, but I'm not sure hate America is actually right, and this doesn't go any further to bring us together either. Democrats certainly are far more critical, and they want to remake America in a different image, but I don't know that hate America is actually helping anybody or getting us where we want to go. Okay, the next one. This is Just In Light at AWONIYI Hassan. I don't even know how to pronounce that, but how it started at real Donald Trump, and it has a picture of Hitler, and then it says how it's going Trump 2020, and then it has a picture of Trump. Okay, so there's a rule in politics: the first person that likens the other person to Adolf Hitler loses. So just don't liken your opponent to Adolf Hitler. That's never a good idea, unless they're actually like mass murdering 6 million people or something along those lines and starting a world war. Don't liken them to Hitler. There's no reason for that. It just inflames things. On the other side, you have Susan Seddon at Susan Seddon, who says, what a joker she is. And it has a picture of the Joker on one side, and right next to it has a less than flattering picture of Kamala Harris. Kamala is not really looking all that good here, and she does kind of look like the Joker in this, this poor picture of her. When you put them side by side, you can kind of see it. But again, that doesn't help anything. How does that help anything except for make you feel better about your side? It doesn't bring anybody together. So it's all bad. But this is all doing that contrast, but it's not a really good way of doing the contrast. Okay, let's talk about the candidates and what the candidates are saying as they're doing their own contrast. So on COVID lockdowns and opening the economy, Joe Biden, this is his tweet saying, we need a president who believes in the science and listens to someone other than himself. Okay, so as you're painting your opponent, you're always unfair to them, right? Listens to someone other than himself. You don't become a trillionaire by not listening to other people. Okay, so that's the first thing. But believes in the science? That's questionable. That's a legitimate question, Joe. So I mean, I think you've got something on that. So if he could have stopped from being a little derogatory with that, he would have had a really strong. It would have been stronger if he said, "We need a president who listens to the doctors," right? That would have been stronger. Okay, so that's Joe Biden's. On the other side, this is Trump, who also is going to be extreme and inflammatory. He says, Biden wants to lock down our country, maybe for years. Okay, no, he doesn't want to lock down the country. He wants to listen to the scientists and do what they say to do, and if it means lockdowns, he's fine with it. Maybe for years, maybe even he's fine with it, but I don't know. Maybe for years. Crazy. There will be no lockdowns. The great American comeback is underway. Okay, so, I mean, but you see a sharp contrast between the two there. And that's what's good about this, is you're actually getting to see the contrast. But when candidates get hyperbolic, and as if they weren't hyperbolic enough there, here's an example of hyperbolic. Here's Joe Biden saying, the future of our planet is on the ballot. Really? Like, I mean, if you don't get elected, the planet's going to be destroyed? I don't think so, Joe. That's a little over the top. It's a little much. Okay. And then Trump saying Biden wants the biggest tax increase in the history of our country. You know, honestly, Biden's kind of more moderate than what other candidates. I mean, if you said that about Bernie, sure, yeah, Bernie wants the biggest tax increase in the history of our country. Biden, I don't know. In fact, he's kind of a threat just because he's less progressive. He's more moderate and can appeal to the middle more. So being hyperbolic here doesn't really help. Okay, now your record is fair game as a politician. You can go after the other person's record. This isn't saying you're ugly and your mother dresses you funny. This is saying, no, this is how he's voted or this is what he has done. And that is perfectly fair. I mean, if politicians just stayed on that, that'd be good. But they get hyperbolic in the process sometimes. But here, this is a great ad. Trump has this thing where he says, you don't have to take my word on Biden's 47 years of treachery and betrayal. We have it on tape. Watch.
My problem is I voted for NAFTA. I'm supporting NAFTA because I think it is a positive thing to do. And I do not pretend to be an expert on international trade matters.
Trade agreements like NAFTA and permanent normal trade relations with China, which forced American workers to compete against people who are making pennies an hour, has resulted in the loss of 160,000 jobs.
The president is absolutely right when he says that China has been cheating for 25 years, and that Bill Clinton didn't do enough about it, George W. Bush didn't do enough about it, Barack Obama didn't do enough about it.
Rising China is an incredibly positive development for not only China, but the United States and the rest of the world. Rising China is a positive development. It is in our self-interest that China continue to prosper. We want to see China rise. China is a great nation, and we should hope for the continued expansion. China is not our enemy.
We talk about China as our competitor. We should be helping.
The idea that China is going to eat our lunch is bizarre. The idea that they are our competition, they're going to beat us, is bizarre. They're not bad folks. China's not a problem.
Allowing China into the World Trade Organization, which he supported, extending most favored nation status to China, which he supported, that those steps allowed China to take advantage of the United States by using our own open trade deals against us.
No.
Do you think in retrospect that you were naive about China?
No.
Doesn't he deserve some credit for that? It's better. The USMCA is better than NAFTA.
It is better than NAFTA.
This is a 5-minute video of all kinds of stupid stuff that Biden has said over time. And in 47 years, any politician is going to say stupid stuff, right? This was a brilliant stroke on Trump's part to play this. And I saw this on the news where he was playing this kind of thing at a rally, showing all the bad stuff that Biden had said over time. And it's hard to argue with when it comes from the horse's mouth. Now, on the other side, you have Joe Biden saying, right now, almost 23 million Americans are on unemployment. True. That's true. Nearly 1 in 5 small businesses have closed their door. That's, I think, true. It's very close to that, and it's particularly hit hard during COVID with restaurants and other types of businesses that are dependent on lots of people congregating. And he says millions of people are at risk of being evicted. That's also true. All these things are true. And then it says we simply can't afford another 4 years of Donald Trump. Okay. To blame Donald Trump for COVID, it's like blaming the Ronald McDonald character when you get a bad hamburger. I don't think that charge is going to stick, but that's what he's using as his most powerful cudgel right now is to blame Trump for COVID. Okay. Donald Trump says this: Joe Biden has vowed to abolish American oil and natural gas. True. Today, I signed an order to strongly protect Pennsylvania's energy and fracking industry. If Biden and Harris get in, they will terminate this order and implement the Green New Deal. Get out and vote. Okay, kind of half true, but it's appealing to a certain base. So he's probably talking to Pennsylvania. If Trump wins Pennsylvania, I think Trump wins. If Biden wins Pennsylvania, I think Biden wins. he really is trying to target that kind of community here. I'm not sure. So Biden is against this fossil fuel kind of thing, and he wants to go to green energy. It's pretty obvious, and he's backtracked on, no, I'm not gonna stop fracking. So he does have a record of saying these kinds of things. Will he implement the Green New Deal? Not quite true, Mr. Trump. He will implement, but he'll move more toward that, but nothing like Bernie's Green New Deal. He's never advocated quite for that. Okay, let's go to the next one. This is Joe Biden saying the Trump administration knew how deadly this virus was back in February, but they didn't tell you or your family. Instead, they gave a heads up to their friends on Wall Street so investors could make a profit before the recession hit. They hid the truth. It's unforgivable. Okay, so Joe's just lying here. He says, hey, why didn't you, do something here? No, he didn't know what this was. Nobody knew what this was. We were all like, what's going on here? In fact, I remember talking to a colleague across the hall about, hey, China just created a quarantine. I mean, I applaud them for taking really effective actions, and this was like a month before what happened here, because they were trying to nip it in the bud so it didn't get out and spread around the rest of the world. Of course, they did that a little bit too late. We found out later, but to blame Trump like that, I don't know that that's really right. And even more than that, Biden is on record rebuking Trump into March. Now that he was talking about how Trump knew and didn't say anything back in February, but in March, Joe Biden, and I have the tweet right here in front of me, said, "Stop the xenophobic fear mongering. Be honest. Take responsibility. Do your job." And this was where a response to Trump saying, "I always treated the Chinese virus very seriously and have done a good job from the beginning, including my very early decision to close the borders of China." And I remember when Trump closed the borders to China, the left was just ripping him left and right about how racist he was for doing that thing. But it turns out, in hindsight, that was the right action. Whether that was too little, too late or not, the left was still ripping him for being a racist because he closed the border to China. So you can't have it both ways, and you're on the record, Joe. So saying that is not exactly right. Okay, now let's go to some good quotes. Here are the best quotes that I've seen here, and let's get beyond the debate quote where he said Abraham Lincoln over here is the most racist president we ever had, or oh, would you shut up, man? Or I mean, I don't mean quotes that capture the popular imagination from the debates. I mean like actual quotes. And Joe Biden said this, and I really like what he says. Listen, the issues we're facing are far bigger than any political party. That's why I'll be a president for all Americans, Democrats, Republicans, and independents alike, because I believe we must work together if we're going to get anything done. Now, the text of what he says is absolutely true, but it's kind of canceled out by the way he's saying other things. It's very similar to when Barack Obama gave that speech and he said there's no red states and blue states, there are the United States. And we're like, yeah, that's right. That's what Americans want, but that's not how he governed when he was in office. And I don't think you'll see the same thing here. But the rhetoric is absolutely right. Joe, absolutely. You should be the president of all Americans. And then here we have another quote, and I think this one's a very good quote as well. This is somebody quoting Donald Trump. It says, "Treat the word impossible as nothing more than motivation to prove them wrong." and that's not political, but I love the quote. It's good stuff. Treat the word impossible as nothing more than motivation to prove them wrong. That's kind of like in Trump's stick. He's just kind of sticking it to the establishment. That's his angle with things. And I think that's a great quote. That's good thinking. So 3 years from now, we're going to look back, and I don't know about you, but my sense is Biden's not quite all there still. I think he's in early stages of dementia. I could be wrong. I'm not that kind of doctor, okay? My PhD is not in that. But he's looking rough. I mean, I showed this thing where he's saying, the rapidly rising I don't know. And he's almost lost. So I think 3 years from now we're going to be like, did we really run? Did a major party really run a guy that they knew was almost in dementia? And if he is elected, Kamala Harris will certainly be president very soon, in my estimation. It's almost like when we look back after the Kerry Edwards election and we think like, did we just about run a vice president who was cheating on his wife who had cancer, John Edwards? I mean, what are we doing here? So that's just my, as I look into the crystal ball, 3 years from now, we're going to look back on this. Either way, it doesn't matter if Biden wins or loses. We're going to look back and say, what were we thinking doing that? But politics brings out the worst in you, where you're going to go do things that maybe weren't the smartest things to do anyway. The last one that I want to look at is this. This is Jonas Kanjani, Yoones Khanjani posted this. It has a guy with a Biden flag shaking hands with a guy with a Trump flag, and they're just shaking hands in the street. And it says, "Vote for who you want, just don't push hate." Election 2020. And now I'm not saying just go vote. I think the idea of it doesn't matter who you vote for, vote. I think that's stupid. I think be informed. Think constitutionally, think long-term for the health of your nation, be as knowledgeable about the facts as possible, and then vote. And if you're not willing to be knowledgeable about the facts, stay home, because you don't want to do inadvertent damage. Now, that's not a message that you're going to hear, because you see, vote, 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 vote. No, understand what's going on, be knowledgeable, vote for people in an informed way. The Founding Fathers wanted an educated citizenry to be making informed choices, and that's what I'm telling you should be doing. I do want you to vote, but I want you to be informed. Hey, that's all that I have for this episode of the Leadersmith podcast. I hope that helps you see some things or some nuances about leadership as we're going through here. I know it's different, but if you understand why politicians are doing what they're doing, they actually do make more sense than what we might have given them credit for when we were just thinking, well, they're just arguing about stuff, they're just mean. No, there's a reason why they're doing what they're doing. And they look better when they're staying closer to the truth than when they're being hyperbolic or when they're shading the truth or outright lying. That leads me to the quotation for contemplation for today, and that is this. It's by Tip O'Neill. He's a former Speaker of the House and Ronald Reagan's deadly adversary in the House of Representatives. So he's the number 3 man, the president, vice president, and then Speaker of the House is the third in the succession. And he said this: "Tell the truth the first time, and you don't have to remember what you said." Which is great advice. Tell the truth the first time, and you don't have to remember what you said. Oh, if politicians would just do that. Hey, thanks for your time. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode or this podcast, would you consider writing a review? I'd appreciate it, because I want people to be able to hear this. Everything out here is free. Nobody has to pay anything for it. I just want people to become the kinds of leaders that they themselves would want to follow.